Hey, and welcome back to Bane's Bites. I'm Bane. We've got another easy recipe for you today. We're going to be making some Asian coleslaw. It's super easy, and if you've never made it before, it's one you should definitely put in the books. The first thing you need is about 4 green onions. I'm just going to cut them up nice and small, and we'll move on past that. We'll use the green and the white bits. Take our green onions, put them out of the way for now. Mixing this slaw up is super simple. I like a big batch because I like leftovers. So you can scale this recipe down to half if you don't need as much, but it's 2 16-ounce bags of pre-chopped coleslaw. I don't know if this bowl's big enough. I don't know how I'm going to toss it. We got half a cup of slivered almonds, and I preferred slivered over sliced because they give you a little bit more crunch and they hold up once we get our dressing tossed in. So this one's easy, there's no rhyme or reason. You just get everything added. I like a lot of sesame seeds as well because they also hold up against the dressing. So I'll do about 3/4 of a cup, maybe a cup of sunflower seeds. You want to make sure you have some good crunch. So I've got about a cup, 3/4 of a cup, maybe a cup of sunflower seeds in there. And next we're going to use our ramen. I use 2 packets of ramen, and it's any ramen you can get, the 10 or 20 cent stuff you need. It doesn't matter about the flavor because I don't use the seasoning packets in there. So just go ahead and break it up real well while it's still in the bag. You don't have to mess with it that way. Make sure you pull out the seasoning packets. If you got any big chunks, go ahead and break them up. You don't want it turned into powder, but bite-sized chunks. Get it all mixed in, and we'll whip up the dressing. So as we go mixing up the dressing, I'm going to start with half a cup of rice wine vinegar. And you can use white vinegar or red vinegar if you want, but for this one I prefer rice wine vinegar. And I've been making this since I started cooking. This is one of the easiest recipes I know how to make, and I've never had someone complain. So along with half a cup of vinegar, I'm going to use a cup of oil since we're making a double batch in essence. This is just one of my regular batches, but I never make half a batch or a regular batch because it doesn't last long enough, and there's no good in that. So I've got some sesame oil, and if you add this just as the regular oil, you'll never survive. It's way too much power, but you just put a couple of splashes and squirts, maybe a tablespoon and a half, teaspoon if you don't like it as much, whichever you prefer. We'll get that mixed in. I'm going to add half a cup of sugar. The last thing we need to round this dressing out is just about a tablespoon or 2 of soy sauce. We'll get that mixed in. I'll grab my whisk, whip it together. And like I was saying, this is super easy. This is kind of like my jalapeno ranch. Anybody can make it, anybody can whip it together, and it'll be a showstopper no matter where you go. As you can see, it's a pretty big recipe. This is a pretty hearty bowl and a pretty good chunk of dressing. But once you get these tossed in together, there's a big debate. I've heard people complain you shouldn't dress it until right before you serve it, or you should dress it and let it sit for a couple hours or even overnight. Let that cabbage and that ramen soak things up. And the first side always says, well, then the ramen's not crunchy. And the other side says, well, that's why we add all the slivered onions. But you can try it either way. I like to sit a little while. Either way you want to go, you can toss it and dress it just before you serve it fresh, and the ramen will be a little bit crunchier. Or you can go my way, and I like to eat it the next day. Once that cabbage has had a good chance to soak up the dressing, everything gets to come together and meld into one. So let's get these tossed together. Just in case you didn't know, there's no better tool in the kitchen than these guys right here. And when you've got a bowl that's right up on the edge and you're waiting for it to wilt down and kind of come together, nothing's more delicate than these 2 hands. So let's dig in and see if we can't get it tossed up a little bit. Just work it slow, let that dressing work all the way through. Get the ramen and nuts and seeds all mixed up in there. Now if you have a bowl big enough, you don't always have to use your hands, but I don't want to spill all over my counter, and I want to make sure I can feel down to the bottom, and I've got dressing all the way through this slaw. So I want to be real careful and try to get it mixed up as best I can. Now when you're making this salad, there's lots of things you can do to kind of spin it and make it your own. I've seen people put in sliced mandarin oranges. I've seen people use cashews or craisins or dried up raisins if you prefer that for a little more sweet or a different kind of crunch. You can omit the carrots, you can add raw onions. The salad's pretty flexible. The slaw is really easy to work with, and you can really own it and make it your own. But if you keep these basic proportions and this idea in mind, it comes out great every time. If you don't want to use sugar, you can always substitute honey or any sort of sweetener that you prefer. Got everything all mixed up. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the fridge for an hour or two, let that dressing kind of absorb. I've saved my green onions for the end because I want to use them more as a garnish than anything. And we'll show you what it looks like once it gets a chance to rest. It's been about 2 hours. We've been letting the coleslaw sit there in the fridge and come together. Let's go ahead and get this out, get it plated up, see what it tastes like. Make sure you get a little bit of everything in there, all the good stuff. Now to garnish it, I want to grab a little bit of green onion, sprinkle that on top, and just for a final touch, I've got some toasted sesame seeds I'm going to sprinkle on top. And that is one heck of a side dish that will go with just about any meal you can think of. I can't wait any longer. Let's dig in and see how it tastes. Just like Mama used to make it. Man, that's good. Thanks for liking, and if you like what we're doing, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you can see we got new stuff coming out. I'm just going to keep eating this. This is too good to wait. You got to try this. Using sesame, sunflower.